Alright, you guys, in this section of the course, you're going to learn how to create a really cool explosion like this one right here. Now, this explosion is a lot simpler than you probably think to create. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new document. And we want our document to be 400 pixels by 400 pixels. Hit OK. And then we're going to fill our background in with the color black. And then we can add in a new layer above that. This new layer is for our first frame. Now in our first frame, we want our explosion to begin. So what we'll do is we're going to come in and select the color white. And then we're going to come over to our lasso tool. Make sure you're on the lasso tool and not the polygonal lasso tool. And we're going to paint in our explosion. So let's zoom in there so we can see a little bit better. And sorry, we're not going to paint it in, we're going to draw it in. So we want it to kind of be like a messy star. So we're just gonna go something like this. Now don't worry about it being perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect. Great. Now let's go ahead and fill that in with the color white. And then we're going to fill in a tiny little star in the middle of it with the color orange. So using my lasso tool, I'm going to go ahead and draw in that star, like so. And then we can fill that in with orange. And we want it to be completely saturated orange, so all the way up to the top right corner of our color picker. And then let's fill that in. Great. Now let's go ahead and add in our second frame by adding a new layer. And on this layer, it's basically going to be a copy of this, just bigger. So using my lasso tool, I'm going to draw a bigger explosion, or it kind of looks like a flower if you want to think about it that way. Then I'm going to fill that in with white. And then I'm going to switch over to an orange. Now up here in my swatches, I can go ahead and select that same color of orange. If your swatches aren't turned on, you want to come up to Window, then come down to swatches and make sure that's checked. So I'm going to select that orange, and then what I want to do is I want to lighten that. So I'm going to drag that to about there. I'll hit OK. Then using my lasso tool once again, I'm going to go ahead and draw on a smaller flower within there, and I'll fill that in with that light orange. Now I'm noticing that this one right here looks a little bit funny, so I'm going to go ahead and use my lasso tool and go like that, and then delete that area. That just feels a little bit better to me. So now our explosion is going to go from that frame to this frame. Now let's go ahead and select both these layers and just make sure that they're in the center of our document. Great. Now let's go ahead and add in our third layer for our third frame. And what we want to do on this third frame is we want to switch over to our brush tool with a pretty large size circular hard-edged brush. And using the same orange color that we already had selected, we're going to paint in random dots like so. And this is going to quickly create our sort of a cloud look, but with the fire colors. And you want to switch up your brush size a little bit, so you might have some small ones in there and some that are just barely touching the edges, and you might have larger ones in there. Alright, next what we want to do is we want to switch our color over to a dark orangish reddish color. So we're going to come more towards the red side, and then we're going to come all the way over almost completely saturated and then come down in darkness. So somewhere in there, we'll hit OK. And then we're going to do the same thing again, but with this color. And we want to keep it within our lighter orange color. And we can bring our brush size down to get some other shapes in there. Perfect. Next, let's go ahead and grab a yellow color. So we're going to come up into our yellows. And we want this to be completely saturated. We might come down a little bit more towards the orange side. And then we're going to paint in some random big spots of yellow, like so. Some of them can be touching, some of them you don't want to be touching. Perfect. Now lastly, we want to go ahead and paint in some white within our yellows. So we're going to bring our color all the way over to white, and we want to paint in some white spots, just like so. Keep them smaller than your yellow circles. Now we just finished our third frame. Let's go ahead and move on to our fourth frame. So we'll add a new layer. And on this frame, we want to select this dark orangish red color, and we're going to make our whole base color for our explosion out of that. So go like so. Great. Next, what we want to do is we want to select this lighter orange color. So if I turn that off, this lighter color back here, we want to select that, and then we're going to turn this layer back on. And then we want to paint in our next layer of explosion. So we want to keep these pretty spread out. So we'll put one like there, 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 and play with the varying sizes of your brush. Great. Next, let's go ahead and select our yellow color. So if we come up to our swatches, we can reselect our yellow color. And then we're going to go ahead and paint in within each one of these spots. Remember to keep them inside of these circles. Perfect. So now let's quickly go over the frames that we've created thus far. So let's turn them all off and start with frame 1. So in frame 1, we start off with the beginning of our explosion. It's pretty small, and then in the next one, it moves up bigger, and then in the next one, it blows up, and then in the next one, it sort of begins to dissipate. So it's still getting larger, but the heat intensity of it is dissipating, and you can tell because the colors are getting darker and more towards the orange side. That brings us to the end of this lecture. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and finish our animation, and then we're going to set it up for playback in Photoshop.